Happy Halloween week. Another episode of Six Rotations for you. He's Mick Haley. I'm Daniel Gillman. Let's get to the good stuff. As always, brought to you by SNA Sports. Better equipment for a better game. And yes, we heard the clamorings. We will do another giveaway this upcoming weekend, and it will be for the massive match. How many total points will be scored between Wisconsin and Nebraska Friday night, 9 o'clock? Email us at sixrotations@gmail.com. We've had about 20 winners throughout this season that have gotten some cool merch. So feel free to throw your name in the hat. And if you've won in the past, try to let me know so that we don't double up with any of that. But Mick, fun weekend. I don't want to beat around the bush too much. What I want to do is I want to show everyone the top 10 right here because the top five stayed the same in the AVCA coaches poll. And now we can kind of just break down the two big matches. How about Pitt Louisville? How about Pitt Louisville? I mean, every time they meet, Mick, it seemingly is the most exciting match of the year. Pittsburgh wins in 5 in an absolute thriller.
Yeah, I thought Pittsburgh would take care of Louisville a little bit more handily, but Louisville fights, and that's the thing that's so important about them. So they defy the numbers a little bit because of the way they compete so hard. And it was where was that match played? Was it played at Louisville?
I believe it was in Pitt. Let me
Yeah.
let me
Yeah,
double
but
check.
the crowds for both teams have been phenomenal. They've been really fun and they've been loud, and I think the fans are traveling. So that was a real good match. And if you missed that, you want to go back and pick it up and watch it. It's worth watching. Some really nice plays, some really good effort by both teams.
Yeah, 11,000 in the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, where Pitt picked up 16 blocks. And Mick, it kind of just keeps coming back to it. When these two teams meet, can Anna DeBeer show up, which she did with 22 kills? But on the other side of things, can there be that efficiency from Babcock? We know she can go for 20. She had 22 kills, but Olivia Babcock hits 326. Stafford goes 15, 5, 50. And then how about Bree Kelly? Kelly had a match to remember. The former Gator, 12 kills, 0 errors, 10 blocks as she hit 500. And, they were off to the races. Louisville would still, salvage the week, though. And that's why I've got them in my top 3 for the media poll we could talk about at the end. But the coaches still have them at 4 behind Penn State. But Louisville's 4-set win over SMU to turn around after that loss and beat SMU was maybe the most impressive thing I saw on the lighter end of the weekend.
Well, and that was at SMU, I believe, and SMU always wins at home. So they didn't quite follow through with their upsets like they've been doing all year, but it was a good match, and it was a hard match for Louisville to play after losing at Pitt and then going into Dallas to play
Yeah.
SMU. So pretty interesting. I actually had Creighton and Wisconsin above Louisville and Stanford, however, simply because of the numbers. And Wisconsin looks like they're back on the road again, but their numbers are so good. Louisville's numbers are not good, and you're right. DeBeer picked it up for that match, and that's what kept Louisville in that match the whole way with Pittsburgh. But Creighton can score. They can hold teams to fewer points. They're second in the whole country in giving points away. So I think we have to see them. The real question is their schedule, and somehow they've got to figure out how to get some good matches in the middle of the year. I just don't know how you do that. Nobody's going to want to play them because they're focused on their conference, but it's a real interesting situation to see how that goes.
Yeah, is there a way around that? Can you maybe get one of those preseason matches during the year? I don't think the answer is yes because nobody wants to go out of their conference to take on a top 10 team. Maybe you can go after a few of the fringe teams that aren't in the Power Four, but at the end of the day, Mick, I think you just got to accept that you're probably not going to be a top 4 seed if you're Creighton unless you win all of your pre-conference matches, right? You've got to go pretty much rough shot through that.
I caught Arizona State picking up Grand Canyon
Yeah,
recently in the middle of the conference schedule.
on a
And
Tuesday, I
that's
think, or
what got
Monday.
me, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what got me thinking about this. If there's a week where Creighton plays Saturday, Sunday, where they could play a Tuesday match or a Monday match like Arizona State did. Maybe Arizona should be calling Creighton because I think one of the overlooked teams is Arizona State, and we can get to that as we get down the schedule.
Yeah, you remember Grand Canyon is just down the road from Arizona State, so it's a little bit tougher, but maybe Creighton can find a team in the area. It's just a hard ask. Meanwhile, sticking with the Midwest, how about NBC again on Saturday afternoon up against the heavyweight college football slate? And I think the viewership is going to be good. I'm excited to see what it looks like. Wisconsin sweeps Purdue. The result, not quite what volleyball fans wanted. You kind of hope that if you have a Saturday afternoon NBC match, it has a five-set thriller like Pitt Louisville was. Meanwhile, nobody could watch Pitt Louisville because it was on ACC Network Extra. Ugh, such a frustrating thing on Friday night. But we talk about the Badgers. They won on a 12-0 run in the first set. They've now won 9 straight and will clash with Nebraska. Nebraska has won, what, 12, 17, something like that. 17 straight for Nebraska. And I'll tell you what, Mick, Wisconsin looks really, really strong. 12 kills from Smrek. And at the end of the day, I think we're going to get the two best defensive teams in the country meeting this weekend with Nebraska, Wisconsin, because that Badgers back row is very, very solid.
Yeah, you would have to throw Pittsburgh in with that though
Yeah.
as the third one, but they're not in the same conference, so you can't really push that. I was just disappointed in Purdue. They're playing at 14,000 people in their basketball arena. They just looked like the moment was too big for them. It just was very interesting. The energy wasn't there, and I wonder if they had trouble playing out of their smaller facility which the fans are right down on top of you and give them a lot of energy. So it was real interesting to watch. But I did think part of that was due to the way Wisconsin played because they played great.
Chacoin was snuffed at 3 kills, 5 errors from the standout outside. Eva Hudson had 17 kills, but 9 errors. And so Purdue drops out of the top 10, as you saw it there. Oregon jumps into it. But Mick, once again, I feel like we have to do this 3 or 4 times a year. What happened to Texas? Texas gets upset at home by A&M, and you kind of mentioned it. You said it before last episode ended. Watch out for Texas A&M. It was an 18-16 final set. Logan Legnicki with 23 kills. What'd you see there?
Well, I was at the match, and it was a very interesting match because Texas actually could have won 3-0. They were on top the first 2 sets. They played very well. The third set, they got a little complacent. They gave Texas A&M a little bit of leash, and they were able to pull the third set out. And then it was no stopping A&M after that. They got comfortable and they started just swinging freely. It went back and forth, back and forth. And quite honestly, Texas played behind the fourth set. In the fifth set, it was really interesting. They had 2 or 3 chances to win and didn't finish the way you'd like to see them win. A&M went to their big hitter, Lignecki, who was just phenomenal. She was hitting out of the back row, out of the front row. Um, they played well at the end, but they don't seem to be able to sustain it. They get up for Texas, they play at that level for Texas, and then it doesn't seem like they can stay at that level for the other Southeast Conference opponents.
Well, Texas upset by an unranked team. USC went 0-2. They were upset with a reverse sweep by Leah Johnson's Michigan State Spartans and lost in 4 to Penn State. Meanwhile, Penn State, who stays in that top 3 spot, had a huge fifth set win over UCLA on Thursday, 15-9 in that final set. Izzy Stark, who we always kind of hype up, she had a huge dump on that match point to put it away. Want to kind of run through a few of the other big storylines from the score lines. And you talk about the Huskers, Nebraska with a big sweep against Illinois. They went to extra points in the third set. And then after the match, John Cook said that the athletic director, Troy Dannon, was all for, quote, all for playing a Big Ten match at Pinnacle Bank Arena to break the attendance record that was just set by Purdue. And then they tied it again with that Mackey Arena, nearly 15,000 fans. Nebraska, they also beat Michigan in 4. What do you think about these basketball arena storylines coming up out of these volleyball schools?
Well, honestly, I've been a proponent for 20 years of getting in the big arenas, and everybody says, "Oh, it's not as much fun," and all this stuff. If you get opportunity usually people come. And if you have opportunity for seats and your team is doing well, they will come. And you look, I'll mention this. Georgia Tech got out of that little box they played in their basketball arena twice, drew over 11,000 people. Purdue 14 plus thousand for the basketball arena. Now people are seeing that people will come to the events if they can have a nice place to sit. They know where the park, they know how to get into the arena, they know where they can go to get their popcorn, and it's pretty fun. Now, and we're filling basketball arenas. I mean, it looked like Big Ten basketball this weekend, the way the arenas were filled. And I think all the Big Ten teams can do that. I think the SEC teams can do that. They've got to think about getting out of those small arenas and getting into the basketball arenas. People will come now because it's a fun game.
It was electric. It was as fun of an environment as it can be. I had goosebumps watching that match because of my experience with Purdue. I worked there for 3 years. Because of my affiliation with that arena, I've seen basketball matches there, and I know, or basketball games, whatever. I know how loud it can be. I'm not sure that it matched it, but I've heard from people that it was very loud. It's hard though when your team is not winning for the fans to really get going. And there was a
I think
fun
all those
sign.
people wanted to get into it, but Purdue didn't accommodate. I mean, there were just so many easy balls that got by, and there was no energy building. They couldn't get 3 points in a row and played behind for most of that match.
Yeah, and so there was a fun sign that said, "We've got the better bald guy," and that was a riot. Unfortunately,
I
Purdue
like that.
on that day did not have the better bald guy. I think if you were to ask Dave Shondell, it was probably a cool experience. I bet he regrets playing Wisconsin in Mackey and wishes that he had the home court advantage of Holloway, where Purdue has beaten Wisconsin, has upset teams in the last 5 years. But one more thing from that Nebraska-Illinois one, Berg and Riley got to face her sister Reagan, and I thought that was a really fun story. We had Schaffmaster do it a couple years ago with her sister at North Carolina, and I thought that was really unique. Want to quickly touch on the ACC to put a little final bow on it. Let's look at the rest of our top 25 here, because this is where a lot of the rest of the excitement from the week came in the 11 through 25. You see SMU stays put at 12. They lost to Louisville. Arizona State has a really, really exciting week coming up, and this brings in my Big 12 talk. So you've got ASU at 13. Of course, Kansas undefeated at 8, but then Baylor gets a big jump. They went up 6 spots with the win over TCU, and BYU at 20, Utah at 22. The Big 12 has a ton of teams in the top 25, and they keep on beating each other, Mick. Baylor beat TCU in 5. Elise McGee had 30 kills. And coming up this week, we've got Arizona State, BYU twice, which is Thursday and Saturday. Are you seeing much of these Big 12 matches?
I have seen the Big 12 matches, but I just look at their numbers, and it's hard for me to get as excited. Kansas, I think, is one of the undervalued teams. I have ASU and Kansas is undervalued. And Kansas is good because they're in the 6 give club. They only give 6+ points to the other team per set. That's one of the reasons why they're really good. The second thing is they score the ball. They score the ball into the 18 points per set, and they score. They're going to do some damage in the tournament, yet you don't see them rising as fast on the charts. You don't hear people talking about him, and I think it's because of the evenness of the teams in the Big 12, like you said, beating up on each other all the time. It's really interesting that the Big 12 hasn't generated more attention, I think, simply maybe because Texas left, but I know they don't want to hear that. But
I, I've got a better answer for you. I think it's because they kind of lost the right to have their games on national TV. They have a couple of them, but losing Texas, an example would be why can't Kansas Utah grab an ESPNU? Now they're doing some of the Wednesday nights, but there's just not enough outreach. All their games are just on ESPN Plus, and Kansas, by the way, swept Utah over the weekend. But both of those teams stay ranked. But Mick, let's talk a little bit more ACC, because you've got that convergence there at the bottom of the top 25. I mentioned SMU at 12. Of course, you've got Pitt and Louisville and Stanford all in the top five. So the ACC has nothing to worry about. But then you go to like the 5, 6, 7 of the ACC, Georgia Tech, Florida State, and North Carolina. I'm not impressed from what I'm seeing. Now, UNC with 5 set wins over Florida State and Miami. The coaches clearly weren't watching because they didn't push them up in the rankings. They stayed at 25. Florida State needs to turn this around. And Georgia Tech and the injuries that Coach Collier has suffered have obviously been tremendous. But this Sunday, Mick, we get UNC Georgia Tech. Louisville against Notre Dame is the other big ACC matchup on Wednesday. Are you seeing what the RPI is seeing? Because the RPI has liked UNC from the get-go.
Yeah, and I haven't figured that out. I wanted to look at the KPRI a little bit also. I've been looking at that. I do like North Carolina, even though the numbers aren't showing what they should yet. They're competing at a high level, and to throw in another team, Virginia has been playing good off and on here. You have
Yeah.
to keep an eye on Virginia also because they've had some 2 weeks of really good play here. So we need to watch them also. Florida State does need to turn this around. They have to have a spurt. When they lost to Florida, I thought that should keep them below Florida quite a bit. But I do think they have to beat some people now and start coming on here in the last third of the season for them to move up. And the team that's interesting is Utah. Utah is kind of snuck in there at 16-4, playing some of these other teams. But Florida State. Miami has lost their juice for some reason. They were really good early. This last third, they have to come back. It's pretty interesting seeing the ACC and some of these other teams that have disappeared in the other conferences.
Yeah, those Texas losses are not stacking up beautifully as the time goes on there. Of course, Miami took down Texas in non-con action. Also, don't forget Stanford FSU. That's on Sunday. That could be a marquee win for the Seminoles, but I don't really see that happening.
Well,
Not
maybe because they have a big block. They have a
they
big
do have a
block, and
big block.
Stanford only scores out of the left side, and they're having trouble scoring points. That's why I give Florida State a chance in the Stanford match. But this may be their last chance to really get back in the picture and have people look at them.
And I believe it's in Tallahassee. And so that's an opportunity. It is in Tallahassee, Sunday at 1 on ESPN. So another showcase, as you mentioned, the ACC is getting a lot of love from the national audience, and there's a reason why. Now, Mick, I want to give you a moment here to get into your points per set bag because you had kind of been, honing in on it here recently. I will go through it quickly because I was looking at it. The top 5 teams in points per set. Creighton is number 1 with a slim lead over Pitt. Penn State 3, Kansas and Wisconsin, and then just below Wisconsin is Nebraska. And they're not separated by much, are they?
No, they're not separated by much at all. In fact, they're all in the 18 plus point level. You don't want to not mention Dayton because Dayton is also scoring up there a bit, but I don't have this last week's points in my statistics. But I do think those 5 teams scoring at that level put themselves in a position to get into the Final Four. I think that's really, really important for coaches and players to understand that you have to score the ball. That's why I'm kind of concerned for Louisville. They're not scoring the ball well. They're only at about 17 on average, and Stanford also is having trouble scoring the ball. So those teams, I look at points scored, kills, and points given up. I have a less forgiving club that I've been tracking, and Pitt's on top of that. They only give up 6.1 points per set. Think about that. You see teams making 6 serving errors. Pitt only gives you 6 total errors per set. So that's one of the reasons that they make up the difference. But Nebraska is only at 6.7, and that's why I have them in there. But here's Kansas at 6.8. You've got Creighton at 7.0, and you've got Wisconsin at 7.3. And that's why I think Wisconsin's moving up because they're not giving away points anymore.
Well, you talk about Dayton, and that gives us a good time to look at the Volleyball Magazine Top 16 media poll. And Dayton gets into it unranked last week. USC and TCU drop out. Dayton jumps in. And, what's really interesting about this is that, the Big 12 not getting a ton of love from the media. BYU and Utah and TCU all out of the top 16. Kentucky also jumped in there. What are you seeing here? SMU in the 11 spot. Texas stays in the top 10. And I'm not sure I'm loving Penn State over Louisville, just the way those two teams have been playing in conference play.
Yeah, I think Penn State has deserved that three spot right now. I actually had Wisconsin four. I thought Wisconsin had moved up to the point that they were impressive against Purdue at Purdue, and so I had them up there. So I think that's interesting to watch. Um, and the bottom part of the Volleyball Magazine poll is interesting because they keep Minnesota in there. And I think they're just continually waiting. The coaches are waiting for Minnesota to explode, and still we don't have that explosion yet.
Agreed. But Minnesota has looked better. They were certainly the team that was the flashy team in the first, 5, 6 weeks of the season. Ever since they beat Wisconsin, the Badgers have been on fire. And I saw this one note too. Kirsten Bernthal Booth, the head coach of Creighton, won her 600th career match this past weekend. Pretty much all I have to say about Creighton, and I know you kind of touched on them earlier. But Mick, is there anything else in the college volleyball world that you want to talk about? I do want to talk about something in the national volleyball landscape. But before we finish that, are there any matches I didn't mention? It's not the media slate. Wednesday, Louisville, Notre Dame. Thursday, Arizona State, BYU. Them again on Saturday, and then Friday, the big Nebraska, Wisconsin.
Well, maybe the Big 12 could take a lesson from the Big 10. Here's the Big 10 schedule coming up this week, and they're on TV 5 of the 7 days. Think about this. On Wednesday, they have two matches with Michigan and Penn State and Oregon and Washington. Then on Halloween, they have UCLA and USC. Everybody can go trick or treating, come home. If you're not on the West Coast, you can still catch the game late that evening. That's good. Friday, they've got 3, 4, 5 matches, 6 matches. Saturday, they've got two more matches, and then Sunday, three more matches, and then Sunday they come with 4 matches. I mean, there's never a time hardly in the week that you cannot see Big Ten on TV. And I think that's the reason they're drawing like they're drawing is they're getting the product out there to the people. They're not putting them on top of each other. They're spreading these matches out, and people can see volleyball, Big Ten volleyball, 5 days a week. Isn't that great?
I agree. I would love to add a Monday and a Tuesday and throw some big matches. But of course, as much as, and I think there was a comment asking about that as well, but as much as that would be great for the fans, it's a lot to ask for the student athletes to try to turn around after a Saturday and then play on a Tuesday or something like that for a student to have to deal with that with their schedule. But we turn the page on the college agenda until next week. How about this? After winning gold 4 years ago, coming up just short in Paris, Karch Kiraly is stepping down as the United States women's head coach, and he is taking the men's role. Now, the men, I believe, finished bronze in Paris. A strong showing. John Speraw, the UCLA head coach, was a revelation to turn that program around. Now Karch is going to lead the men. First question. Who is the top candidate in your eyes to lead this women's team? It's got to be someone from one of our top teams, I have to imagine.
Really interesting question because we had Kathy DeBoer on Master Coach's Weekly Buzz this morning, and she basically said it will be a large group of candidates. She actually suggested that we pick a coach from either of the two pro leagues that are playing in the country, not discounting the collegiate coaches at all, but saying that there are now coaches that have experience in the United States of coaching the elite athletes that have graduated from college and have been playing pro. So she opened the box up for a greater view. And she said this about John Speraw, who just became the new CEO of USA Volleyball. They said he hit a home run on his first hire, meaning Karch for the men's team. And I said, so we're looking for back-to-back on the women's program, huh? And she wouldn't give any names, but she just opened that floodgate up to not only the collegiate coaches in the country, but all of the pro coaches that are coaching in the two leagues now in the United States. So that's very interesting.
Cannot wait to see. I would love in the comments, throw some names out there. Let us know what you think. You know, we have a group chat that has all of the voters of the Volleyball Magazine media poll. We had some guesses thrown out there, but I'll save it for next week. I want to see what you fans can come up with as some of the top options for the United States women's national team. And Mick, once again, very excited to see all of these guesses, how many total points it can range, because we could have a sweep in Madison or they could go 5. And I know that there will be somewhere out there. I think we had someone that got the number exactly right in the match we did a few weeks ago, Creighton against Marquette. So now we'll see to try to win a little bit of 6 rotations winter gear, and that'll be a lot of fun. So email us 6 rotations, spell it all out, SIX rotations @gmail.com. And as always, so happy that you're with us on this early Halloween celebration. I know we still got a few days to go, but hopefully you guys all celebrate safely, and talk to you next week. He's Mick, I'm Daniel, and this is 6 Rotations.